the spark that lit the fuse. Imagine a world where 13 fragile colonies stand face to face with the most powerful empire on Earth. A world where victory feels impossible, the spark that lit the fuse. Imagine a world where 13 fragile colonies stand face to face with the most powerful empire on Earth. A world where victory feels impossible and defeat almost certain. And yet, from the smoke of revolution rises a nation. But here's what most people don't know. America almost lost the Revolutionary War. This isn't the Hollywood version with a guaranteed happy ending. This is the real story of mistakes, betrayal, starvation, and near collapse. It's the story of how a handful of rebels, against all odds, fought the longest of fights and came terrifyingly close to losing everything. Welcome to the historical world. And today, we're telling the full story of how America almost never existed before the fire. Let's rewind. Back to the mid-1700s. The colonies were thriving, but they weren't really American yet. They were British, loyal mostly, proud to be part of the empire. But then something changed. In 1763, Britain had just won a massive war against France. It was called the 7 Years' War, or in North America, the French and Indian War. And while the British won, they were now drowning in debt. So the Crown looked at its colonies and said, "Time to pay your fair share." And how did they do that? Taxes, the Stamp Act, paper, protest, and fury. In 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act. It taxed every piece of printed paper used by the colonists, legal documents, newspapers, licenses, even playing cards. Yes, even poker night wasn't safe. The idea? A small fee. Nothing major. But to the colonists, it was an insult. They shouted, "No taxation without representation." Why? Because they had no voice in Parliament. No vote. No say. And yet, they were being taxed like subjects, not citizens. The response? Massive protests. Newspapers lit up with angry headlines. Colonial leaders called it tyranny. A secret group formed, the Sons of Liberty, and they weren't playing nice. They burned stamps in the streets, destroyed officials' homes, threatened tax collectors. It worked. By 17, the British government repealed the Stamp Act. But they didn't forget. And they weren't done. The fuse shortens. Over the next few years, more taxes came. The Townshend Acts, the Tea Act, the Intolerable Acts, each one a spark, each one feeding the fire. And the colonists, they weren't backing down anymore. Shots fired, Lexington and Concord. April 19th, 1710, British troops marched to Lexington, then Concord, to seize weapons and arrest rebel leaders. But the Minutemen, local militias, are waiting. Someone fires the first shot. No one knows who. But that shot becomes known as the shot heard round the world. It's official now. This isn't protest anymore. This is war. Disorganized, underdog, and undone. The war has begun. But victory, that's a different story. Because in 17, The American colonies aren't ready for war. Not even close. They have no navy, no formal army, no national government. They're 13 separate colonies, each with different priorities, loyalties, and leaders. Basically, imagine trying to fight the world's strongest army with a bunch of neighbors who can't even agree on what to bring to the cookout. Enter George Washington. The Continental Congress knows they need a face, a commander. So they choose a tall, quiet Virginian with experience. George Washington. He's not flashy. He's not the best tactician. But he's respected, steady, and most importantly, willing. Washington takes command of the ragtag Continental Army near Boston. What he sees is rough. These soldiers aren't trained. They're farmers, blacksmiths, teachers. Most don't even have uniforms or shoes. And supplies? Well, let's just say 1775's Amazon Prime wasn't exactly reliable. Bunker Hill, a bloody lesson. The first major battle. Bunker Hill, June 7th. British troops launch a full assault on American positions. The Americans dug in, low on ammo, hold their ground. They're told, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. They wait. Then unleash a brutal defense. The British win the ground, but lose over 1,000 men doing it. The colonists lose fewer than half that. A technical loss, but a moral victory. The message is clear. We can fight. But one thing becomes obvious. This war will be long and bloody. The British Empire strikes back. Back in London, the king isn't amused. How dare these rebels resist the crown? So Parliament responds with overwhelming force. They send more troops, more ships. They blockade ports and offer pardons to those who surrender. But not to Washington, and not to the Continental Congress. They're considered traitors. And traitors? Hang! Canada, in a bold, some say a desperate move, American forces tried to invade Canada in 1770. Why? To convince French Canadians to join the rebellion. Also, to stop British troops from using Canada as a base. The plan? March through harsh wilderness in winter. Attack Quebec. Claim it. What actually happened? Disaster. Freezing cold. Starvation. Disease. The attacks. Leaders are wounded or captured. Canada stays loyal to Britain. Struggle within. Back home, things are falling apart. Some colonies don't want full independence. Others won't send money or troops. Washington is constantly begging Congress for supply. Soldiers are unpaid, hungry, sick. Desertion rates rise. Morale drops. It's a miracle this army survives at all. And yet, it does. Because Washington keeps them together. Not with victories, but with patience, common sense, and the final break. Early 1790, a pamphlet spreads like wildfire. Its title, Common Sense, by Thomas Paine. In plain, powerful language, Paine argues, why stay loyal to a king who sends troops to kill you? Why obey a distant island that sees you as property? He makes the case for full independence. And Americans listen. By July 4th, 1790, the decision is made. The colonies declare, We are free, we are united, we are America. But declaring freedom is not the same as winning it. And as 1706 rolls on, the British return with full force and a plan to crush the rebellion once and for all. Disaster in New York, America's lowest point. America has declared independence. Fireworks, cheers, victory. Not quite, because Britain is done playing games. They send the largest military force ever deployed to North America. 2,000 troops, 10,000 sailors, hundreds of warships, professional soldiers, the best in the world. And where do they land? New York. The Battle of Long Island, a crushing blow. Knows it's coming. He positions his troops across Brooklyn Heights, hoping to defend New York. But the British, they outflank him. They move quietly at night, through a road Washington thought was impassable. By the time the Americans realize what's happening, they're surrounded. What follows is a disaster. Thousands of Continental troops are killed or captured. The British take New York City. American morale plummets. It's the biggest defeat of Washington's entire military career. The escape that saved a revolution. But here's the twist. Washington does something brilliant. In the middle of the night, under heavy fog, he organizes a covert evacuation across the East River. Troops board boats in silence. They row back to Manhattan, all night long. When morning comes, the British storm the American camp. And it's empty. Washington pulled off a miracle escape. If he hadn't, the war may have ended right there. A city on fire, the battle for New York. Even after Long Island, Washington tries to hold the rest of New York. But it's no use. He's outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. One by one, he's pushed back. Harlem Heights, White Plains. The British take the entire city. New York becomes their headquarters for the rest of the war. And the American army, it's shattered, retreating, freezing, starving. Some say the revolution is over. A few more battles and it's done. Retreat to New Jersey. The army bleeds. By late 17th, as Washington's army is on the run. They've lost New York. They're being chased across New Jersey. Their numbers are dropping by the day. No shoes. No coats. Bloody footprints in the snow. Literally. The enlistments of thousands of troops are about to expire. Many plan to leave on January 1st. If something doesn't change soon, this rebellion will collapse. Washington knows it. He needs a victory, not a symbolic one, a real one. The surprise at Trenton. December 2017. While most are celebrating Christmas, Washington is planning an attack. His target, a garrison of Hessian mercenaries, elite German soldiers, camped in Trenton, New Jersey. That night, Washington leads his men across the icy Delaware River. Freezing rain. Blinding snow. Several soldiers die just from the cold. But they press on. They march 9 miles in silence until they reach Trenton. At dawn, they strike. The Hessians are caught off guard, hungover, half asleep. The Americans storm the town in a lightning assault. It's a stunning success. Over 100 enemy soldiers captured. Only 2 American deaths. For the first time in months, Washington wins. The war isn't over yet, but neither is hope. The victory at Trenton is more than a battlefield win. It's a morale boost. It electrifies the colonies. Recruits start coming back. Confidence returns. And a few days later, Washington strikes again at Princeton. Another American victory. In just 10 days, Washington turns the tide. From collapse to comeback. The British realize these rebels won't go down so easy. But don't celebrate yet. Because the darkest days are still ahead. The British regroup. The war spreads. Loyalists rise. And betrayal is coming. The turning point that almost wasn't. The year is 1790. The American Revolution is still alive, barely. Washington has pulled off 2 miraculous wins at Trenton and Princeton. But the British, they're about to strike with a new strategy. One that could split the colonies in 2 and end the rebellion for good. The British plan to slice America in half. The new British plan is bold. General John Burgoyne will march south from Canada. General William Howe will come up from New York. The 2 armies will meet in Albany, New York. If it works, they'll cut off New England, the heart of the rebellion, from the rest of the colonies. Divide and conquer, classic. But there's a problem. General Howe has other ideas. Instead of marching north, he sails south to capture Philadelphia, the American capital. Because clearly, nothing says victory like ignoring the actual plan. Philadelphia falls. Congress runs. In September 1706, Howe's army takes Philadelphia. Congress flees. The Continental Army is forced to retreat. Washington tries to fight at Brandywine and later at Germantown, but both battles end in defeat. It's another rough stretch. Another reminder. The American army still isn't ready for a European-style war. The capital is gone. Morale is shaken. The winter is coming. But far to the north, something unexpected is happening. The disaster at Saratoga for the British. General Burgoyne, still marching south from Canada, is in trouble. The American wilderness is unforgiving. Dense forests, harsh terrain. Native American allies begin abandoning him. Supplies run low. Locals harass the troops. Progress slows to a crawl. And then he runs into the American army near Saratoga, led by Horatio Gates and a bold, wounded warrior named Benedict Arnold. Yes, that Benedict Arnold. We'll get to his betrayal later. The Americans surround Burgoyne's forces. They fight. And finally, in October 1716, Burgoyne surrenders. Over 6,000 British troops captured. An entire invasion army gone. The world is watching. France notices. Saratoga changes everything. Until now, Europe watched the war with amusement. The British, obviously favored. The rebels doomed. But Saratoga, it proves America can win. And to France, longtime enemy of Britain, that's good news. American diplomat Benjamin Franklin, in Paris with his charm, wit, and fur-lined hat, seizes the moment. In 1708, after long negotiations, France officially joins the war. They bring money, weapons, soldiers, and most importantly, a navy. The war is no longer just a rebellion. It's now a global conflict. Valley Forge, the crucible of hardship. While Europe joins the fight, Washington's army is freezing to death in Valley Forge. The winter of 1778 is brutal. No food, little clothing. Disease spreads. Thousands desert. Hundreds die. It's not a battle, but it's a test. A test of endurance, of spirit, of resolve. But in the frost and filth, something incredible happens. A Prussian officer named Baron von Steuben arrives. He barely speaks English, but he sure knows how to train an army. Von Steuben drills the men relentlessly. He teaches them how to march, shoot at, reload, like professionals. He writes a training manual that becomes the backbone of the Continental Army. By spring, Washington's army isn't a militia anymore. It's a fighting force. A war that won't end quickly. By 78, the war has changed. France is in. The British strategy has failed. The American army has matured. But victory is still far away. The British shift their focus to the south, hoping to rally loyalists and choke the revolution from below. Meanwhile, internal struggles, money, politics, betrayal begin to erode American unity. And somewhere in that mix, a hero will become a traitor. Benedict Arnold's Betrayal and the Southern Bloodbath. Every revolution has a traitor. For America, it was Benedict Arnold. He was once a hero. Now, a name that echoes with betrayal. The rise and fall of a patriot. Let's rewind. Benedict Arnold was a fearless warrior. He stormed Quebec. He helped win Saratoga. He nearly died for the cause. But what did he get in return? Passed over for promotion. Accused of corruption. Constantly disrespected. Congress loved his victories. But not him. Angry, bitter, in debt. Arnold makes a choice that changes history. He offers to betray West Point, a key American fort, in exchange for money and a British command. The plan: he secretly arranges with British Major John Andre to hand over West Point. But before the plan is complete, Andre is captured with the papers. The scheme is exposed. Arnold flees to the British side. Andre is hanged as a spy. And America? Shocked. A war hero turned traitor. The South ignites. Britain's final gamble. After failing in the North, Britain changes tactics. They target the South, where Loyalist support is stronger. In 1780, British troops take Charleston, South Carolina, the worst American defeat of the entire war. Thousands of patriots surrender. Then comes Camden. Another disaster. The American Southern Army is routed. Morale hits rock bottom. The South becomes a nightmare battlefield. Cities change hands repeatedly. Civil war breaks out between neighbors. Brutal guerrilla tactics define the fighting. This isn't two neat armies meeting on open fields. It's raids, ambushes, revenge killings. The war has turned savage. The rise of the swamp fox. But in this chaos, new leaders emerge. One of them? Francis Marion, aka the Swamp Fox. He uses hit-and-run tactics, hiding in the swamps of South Carolina. He raids supply lines, ambushes patrols, and vanishes before the British can respond. He's not alone. Fighters like Thomas Sumter, Andrew Pickens, Daniel Morgan use irregular tactics to exhaust the enemy. The British realize they may control cities, but they don't control the land. Nathaniel Greene, the master of retreat. Washington appoints Nathaniel Greene to command the Southern Army. Greene isn't flashy. He isn't beloved. But he's brilliant. His strategy? Don't win battles. Survive them. He fights small engagements, then retreats. Again and again. He forces the British to chase him across hundreds of miles. The most famous example: the race to the Dan River. British General Cornwallis pushes hard to catch Greene. But Greene keeps slipping away, bleeding the British army, stretching their supply, weakening their will. Greene never wins a major battle, but he never loses the war. Sometimes staying alive is victory. The tide turns at Cowpens and Guilford. In early 1781, the tide shifts again. At Cowpens, American forces under Daniel Morgan trick the British into charging, then crush them with a perfectly timed counterattack. It's one of the most brilliant tactical victories of the war. Weeks later, at Guilford Courthouse, Greene's army battles Cornwallis. The British win, barely, but they lose. And over 25 of their men. It's a win that feels like defeat. Cornwallis is exhausted. He limps north toward Virginia, looking for reinforcements, looking for safety. Instead, he'll find Yorktown. But we'll get to that. A nation still on the brink. By mid-1781, the war is still not won. The economy is in shambles. The continental dollar is worthless. Soldiers are unpaid and angry. Congress is dysfunctional. Washington writes desperate letters to Congress. Without money, we cannot maintain an army. Without an army, we cannot win the war. And yet, something's shifting. The Americans are learning. They're adapting. They're still standing. The British? They're stretched thin. Fighting rebels at home and enemies abroad. And they've made one critical mistake. They underestimate the patience of a people fighting for freedom. The siege that changed everything? Yorktown. It's 1781. The Revolutionary War has dragged on for over 6 years. America is broke. Soldiers are starving. Congress can't even pay the army. And yet, the British are exhausted too. And just when it seems like this war might never end, one moment changes everything. Cornwallis heads to Yorktown. British General Charles Cornwallis is frustrated. He's spent months chasing American forces across the Carolinas, winning battles but losing men. So he makes a fateful choice. He marches his army to Yorktown, Virginia, a coastal town on the Chesapeake Bay. There, he builds strong defenses and waits for British ships to resupply him. What he doesn't know? He just walked into a trap. The French Navy makes its move. Meanwhile, far out at sea, the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse sets sail from the Caribbean. They're not heading north by accident. Washington and French General Rochambeau have a plan. Trap Cornwallis by land. Block British reinforcements by sea. It's bold, risky. And timing is everything. In August 1781, Washington fakes a move toward New York, tricking the British into staying put. Then in secret, he marches his entire army over 400 miles south in less than a month. The siege of Yorktown begins. By late September, the American and French armies, over 17,000 strong, surround Yorktown. Cornwallis has just 8,000 troops. The French fleet arrives just in time, and defeats the British Navy at the Battle of the Chesapeake. Cornwallis is trapped. No food. No backup. No escape. The bombardment begins. Day and night, cannon fire rains down on the British defences. Night assault and no mercy. On October 14th, a bold move is made. American troops, including a unit led by Alexander Hamilton, storm one of the key British redoubts, Redoubt Number 10, under cover of darkness. They use bayonets only. No guns. No mercy. It is over in 10 minutes. The British are overwhelmed. The defensive ring is collapsing. By October 17th, Cornwallis sends up the white flag. 2 days later, he officially surrenders over 7,000 British soldiers. The most powerful empire in the world. Defeated by farmers, merchants, blacksmiths, and a dream. The surrender ceremony. October 19th, 1780, the official surrender. British troops march out between ranks of French and American soldiers. Their band plays a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down." How fitting. Cornwallis claims he's ill and sends his second-in-command to surrender his sword. Washington refuses to accept it personally. Pride, protocol, power. And still, no one knows if this is truly the end. The war isn't over, not yet. Even after Yorktown, the war continues for nearly 2 more years. British troops still hold New York City. Skirmishes break out in the south. Peace talks drag on in Paris. And worse, mutiny is brewing in the American army. Soldiers demand their pay. There are whispers of marching on Congress, even of crowning Washington king. The revolution is at risk from within. But Washington holds it together. He speaks to his officers, reminds them what they fought for. He resigns his command voluntarily in 1780, shocking the world. The Treaty of Paris, a new nation is born. On September 3rd, 1783, the war finally ends. The Treaty of Paris is signed. Britain recognizes the independence of the United States. The new borders stretch from the Atlantic to the Mississippi, from Canada to Spanish Florida. A nation is born, beaten, broke, and barely breathing. But still free. Closing thoughts, it almost didn't happen. Let's not forget, America lost more battles than it won. It was nearly defeated multiple times. Without France, luck, and timing, this revolution could have been crushed. And yet, they endured. Not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to quit. Epilogue: the aftermath and legacy of a near defeat. The Revolutionary War was over, but the struggle for America's future had only just begun. Peace wasn't peaceful. The Treaty of Paris may have ended the war, but it didn't end the pain. Cities were in ruins. Trade was shattered. Tens of thousands of families had lost homes and loved ones. The country was now free, but also deeply fractured. Loyalists, those who had supported Britain, were branded as traitors. Their property was seized. Many were attacked or forced to flee. Over 60,000 Loyalists left for Canada, Britain, or the Caribbean. The revolution had created liberty, but also enemies within. George Washington, the man who could have been king. After the war, Washington was at the height of his power. He could have seized it all. The army loved him. The people trusted him. Congress was weak and directionless. In fact, some whispered of making him a king. His answer: He walks into Congress, hands over his sword, and retires to Mount Vernon. This moment shocks the world. Kings don't step down, but Washington did. Having now finished the work assigned me, I retire from the great theater of action. The Constitution, born from chaos. The Articles of Confederation, America's first attempt at government, were a disaster. No power to tax, no standing army, no executive authority. It quickly became clear. Winning a war was easier than building a nation. In 1780, leaders met in Philadelphia to draft a new framework. The U.S. Constitution. A president, a Congress, a system of checks and balances, and a Bill of Rights to protect freedoms hard won in blood. The revolution wasn't just military. It was political, legal, philosophical. Slavery, silence and shadows. But let's not sugarcoat history. This was a nation founded on liberty that still practiced slavery. Many founding fathers, including Washington and Jefferson, owned enslaved people. The contradiction was glaring, and it would haunt the nation for generations. Some spoke against it, but most stayed silent. Justice cannot sleep forever. And it didn't. But the reckoning would come nearly a century later, in the Civil War. The global shockwave. The American Revolution wasn't just a national event. It shook the world. Inspired by America, revolutions broke out. In France in 1789. In Haiti in 1790. Across Latin America by the early 1800s. The idea that people could govern themselves, that kings could be dethroned, became a contagious wildfire. The revolution was American in origin, but global in impact. What we can learn today. So what does this mean for us today? The Revolutionary War wasn't a guaranteed victory. It was messy, chaotic, imperfect, and full of failure. But America's survival came down to three things: relentless resilience, unlikely alliances, and the refusal to quit. We often remember the victories, but it's the struggles, the almosts, the barely held together moments that tell the real story. The story of the American Revolution is not just how a country won its independence. It's how it nearly didn't. And how, against all odds, a fragile rebellion became the foundation for something much bigger. A republic. An experiment. A nation still becoming. If you've made it this far, thank you. Now you know how close it all came to falling apart. So next time someone says, "Of course America won its freedom," you'll know better. It wasn't destiny. It was decisions. It was blood. It was belief. And it was people, imperfect, determined and human, just like us. Like what you heard? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dive history documentaries.